The night pressed down on Denver like a heavy hand, the air cold enough to sting the lungs. Street lamps cast pale halos over empty sidewalks, and the industrial district lay still, its warehouses and freight yards silent except for the hum of distant traffic. Somewhere in those shadows, Cole Maddox moved. He wasn't running in panic. He was moving with the calculated calm of a man who had trained his entire life for situations exactly like this. Maddox was an ex-Special Forces operative, dishonorably discharged under circumstances still classified. 3 days ago, he had been named the prime suspect in the killing of 2 federal agents during a shootout that left half a block burned and unrecognizable. Witnesses said he had walked away through the chaos as if he were invisible. Now his name was flashing across every police database in the country. The manhunt had started before the smoke from the scene had even cleared. Detective Ethan Ward leaned over a glowing digital map inside the buzzing command center. Red markers spread outward like blood from a wound, each one representing a possible Maddox sighting. Ward had been in plenty of high-stakes chases before, but he knew from the start this one was different. Maddox wasn't a desperate fugitive making mistakes. He was a tactician. His movements were deliberate, his choices precise. Every safe house raided was still warm from his presence, coffee cups half full, doors unlocked as though to mock the people behind him. Ward wasn't hunting a cornered animal. He was tracking a predator. By dawn, the task force had grown into a nationwide operation. Federal agents, SWAT teams, state troopers, and drone operators joined the hunt. Surveillance feeds flickered on a dozen screens. Black SUVs tore through city streets. News helicopters circled like vultures overhead, their footage streaming to a country glued to the story. The warning to the public was clear: do not approach, call immediately. But Ward knew those alerts were meaningless. Maddox didn't make himself visible unless he wanted to be seen. He was moving with a goal, and that meant he had a destination. 2 states away. Maddox sat in the passenger seat of a stolen pickup truck as it rolled into a quiet Arizona town. His cap was pulled low, his unshaven face shadowed, but his eyes never stopped scanning. He slipped into a pawn shop that doubled as an illegal arms dealer. The owner, an old man with tattoos and a permanent cigarette between his lips, didn't say a word. Within minutes, Maddox left carrying a worn M4 rifle, a suppressed pistol, and a handful of smoke grenades. He didn't just need weapons to defend himself. He was preparing to strike. The pieces were falling into place. Ward pieced together the pattern over stale coffee and hours of review. Maddox's route was no coincidence. Each stop corresponded to a former member of his military unit, men who had disappeared into obscurity years ago. Now they were surfacing again, either dead or missing, in the wake of Maddox's path. This wasn't survival, it was a vendetta. And the final name on the list was Gabriel Kane, an ex-CIA commander living on a secluded ranch outside El Paso. Kane was the kind of man who had made enemies in every corner of the world, but this was personal. Ward realized it too late. Maddox wasn't fleeing the country. He was going straight for Kane. The manhunt rolled into its 5th day. Reports poured in from truck stops, small airports, and border towns. A stolen sedan was found riddled with bullets in Oklahoma, the driver gone without a trace. Surveillance from a Kansas gas station showed Maddox, head down, sliding cash across the counter before vanishing into the night. He was accelerating, the distance between sightings shrinking. Ward could feel the tension building like a storm pressing against glass. On the 7th night, the break came. A motel maid in New Mexico turned in a stolen cell phone left in a trashed room. The device had a half-written text addressed to a number linked to Kane's property. Analysts confirmed it. The endgame was El Paso. The task force mobilized immediately, but in the empty miles of desert highway, speed was relative. Maddox had a head start, and he knew how to use it. The ranch sat alone against a horizon of black sand and starlight, its perimeter marked only by sagging wire fences and the occasional glint of security cameras. Inside, Kane sat at a kitchen table with a revolver laid next to a glass of whiskey. He didn't look surprised when Maddox stepped through the door. For a moment, they simply stared, the years between them compressed into the charged silence of men who had once trusted each other with their lives. "You left them to die," Maddox said, voice flat, like he'd rehearsed the line for years. Kane didn't blink. You made your choice the day you stopped following orders. The words hung there, cold and final. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a reckoning. In the distance, headlights flared. Engines roared closer. The dust they kicked up hung in the air like a rising storm. Kane's eyes flicked toward the window, then back to Maddox. Whatever was about to happen, both men knew they had only moments left to decide it. Maddox's hand moved faster than Kane's. A muffled shot cracked through the stillness. Kane staggered, the revolver falling from his grip. Blood spread across his shirt as he crumpled forward. Maddox turned toward the door, but floodlights snapped on outside, burning the night into a harsh white glare. Armored vehicles skidded into place, and men in tactical gear poured out, shouting commands. Maddox melted into the darkness between outbuildings, firing short, precise bursts that kept his pursuers pinned. Smoke grenades hissed and bloomed, turning the ranch into a shifting maze of shadows. Ward leapt from the lead SUV, eyes tracking Maddox's movement toward the north fence. He gave chase, boots biting into the sand. The night air was sharp in his lungs, the rhythm of his breath sinking with the pounding in his ears. Ahead, Maddox crested a ridge, outlined for a second against the cold shimmer of stars. Ward's voice cut through the wind. "Maddox, it's over." Maddox slowed, then turned to face him. In the blinding lights behind them, the chaos raged on. But here on the ridge, the world felt still. "They never tell the whole story," Maddox said, his tone carrying a weight Ward couldn't place. Then he dropped his weapon into the sand and sank to his knees. Agents swarmed, cuffing him, pulling him toward the convoy. Ward stood where he was, watching the man who had outmaneuvered them for days disappear into the armored transport. The wind swept across the ridge, carrying the faint metallic tang of gunpowder. Ward knew in his gut this wasn't truly over. Maddox had left too many unanswered questions, too many ghosts behind. The manhunt had ended here, but it hadn't resolved anything. By sunrise, media vans lined the road, their cameras capturing Maddox being shoved into the back of a heavily guarded transport. Reporters shouted over one another, their questions unanswered. Across America, screens lit up with the headline, "American Manhunt Over." For the public, the story was a victory. For Ward, it was unfinished business. Maddox had been more than a fugitive. He had been a man with a mission no one fully understood, and Ward wasn't sure the truth would ever see daylight. Deep inside a high-security federal facility, Maddox sat alone in a concrete cell, staring at the wall. His hands rested loosely in his lap, his breathing slow and measured.